The Asterline hung silently above Elysium 5, its hull reflecting the green-blue swirl of the planet below. Humans had never been here before. They had only studied the planet from a distance, through probes and telescopes. Now Mara Hale, one of the youngest human linguists in the Interstellar Alliance, was preparing to make first contact with the Aelori, a proud, alien race whose beauty and danger were legendary. Mara adjusted her communication headset and looked out at the palace floating in the sky above the clouds. The Aelori Palace was unlike anything she had seen. It was built of crystalline spires, shining softly in the planet's twin suns. Light refracted in colors Mara had no names for. She could feel the hum of the palace through the floor of the landing platform, a strange pulsing energy that seemed almost alive. "You ready for this?" asked Commander Rill, her captain, leaning against the railing. He was tall and broad, with a calm face that Mara found comforting. Mara swallowed and nodded. "I think so, but I have to admit I'm nervous." "Don't be," Rill said. "You're the best we have for understanding them. Just remember, respect their rules. And whatever you do, don't touch the princess unless she allows it." Mara's heart thumped. She had read every report available on the Aelori and their customs, but nothing could fully prepare a human for standing in front of a royal alien being. She adjusted her gloves, ensuring they were pristine and free of contaminants, then stepped onto the walkway that would take her to the palace doors. The doors were enormous, made of a translucent material that rippled like liquid glass. As Mara approached, the surface shifted, folding in on itself to reveal a wide passage. The air smelled faintly of ozone and sweet blossoms. She stepped inside, feeling a strange warmth spread through her chest. In the central hall, the Aelori waited. They were taller than humans, their skin glimmering in shades of violet and silver. Their eyes were large and reflective, like polished gemstones, and their hair, or what seemed like hair, was a series of glowing filaments that moved as if in water. Mara tried not to stare, but her mind could not stop cataloging every detail. And then she saw her, the princess, Laysun. She stood at the end of the hall, regal and perfect, her presence commanding attention without a single word. Her violet skin shimmered softly, and her eyes locked on Mara with a gaze that felt like it could pierce right through her mind. Around her, attendants moved silently, but all eyes returned to Laysun. Even the palace seemed to bend toward her. Mara's breath caught. She had seen pictures, holograms, and simulations, but nothing prepared her for the reality of being in the same space as someone so alien. She stepped forward, keeping her hands carefully at her sides. Laysun's voice, when she spoke, was sharp yet melodic, human. One word, but it carried weight.
"Why have you come to my palace?"
Mara bowed slightly. "Your Highness, I am Mara Hale, sent by the Interstellar Alliance to learn about your people, to build understanding between our worlds." The princess tilted her head, considering her. "Understand?" she asked, the word a challenge. "Humans claim to understand the universe, yet you barely understand yourselves." Mara smiled nervously. "We are learning. That is why I am here." Laysun's gaze narrowed. She stepped forward, and Mara felt the hum of energy increase. The air seemed thicker, charged with the princess's presence. Mara's mind raced. She had studied Aelori customs, knew that physical contact without consent could be dangerous. She kept her hands still, palms outward in a neutral gesture. The princess suddenly raised a hand. Mara flinched. Laysun's long fingers shimmered with faint light. "Do not touch me," she warned, her voice cutting through the hall like a blade. "Touch me again and I will bleed you dry, human." Mara froze. Her mind stumbled over the words. Did she understand them correctly? Was it a literal threat or a ritualized warning? Either way, the tension in the room was electric. She slowly lowered her hands and nodded. "I understand, Your Highness. I will not touch you without permission." Laysun studied her for a long moment. Then, as if satisfied, she gestured for Mara to step closer. Mara did, careful to maintain the proper distance. The princess's eyes softened slightly. Not much, but enough for Mara to notice. It was the tiniest sign of acceptance, but in Aelori culture it was meaningful. "You are brave, human," Laysun said finally. "Or foolish. Perhaps both." She circled Mara slowly, her glowing filaments brushing lightly against the air. "Why do you reach toward what is forbidden?" Mara thought of the force field outside the palace, the invisible barrier that separated humans from the alien world. She thought of the potential for understanding, for connection. Because knowledge requires risk, she said quietly. And because I wish to help, not harm. Lisan stopped, studying her again. For a moment it seemed the palace held its breath. Then the princess turned abruptly and walked toward a balcony overlooking the city below. Mara followed, careful not to intrude, but compelled to keep pace. The balcony offered a breathtaking view. Floating gardens drifted on the wind currents, and sleek towers reflected the twin suns. Mara felt a rush of wonder. Lisan placed a hand on the railing, the light in her filaments dimming slightly as she looked down at the city. "You are curious, human," Lisan said softly. "Curiosity is dangerous for us. We guard our knowledge carefully, yet you would risk your life for it." Mara nodded. "Yes, Your Highness. Because understanding one another is the only way to prevent mistakes. War, misunderstanding, suffering, all of it comes from failing to see each other clearly." The princess's eyes glimmered. "Perhaps you are different from the others. Perhaps you are worthy of our trust. Or perhaps you are naive. We shall see." As they spoke, Mara felt something odd, like a faint pulse connecting her to the princess. She realized her heartbeat was almost in sync with Lisan's. She blinked and the sensation faded, leaving her curious and unsettled. What had that been? A trick of the mind? Or something biological unique to the Aelori? Before she could ponder further, one of the princess's attendants approached. The air shifted, a subtle vibration warning Mara to step back. The attendant bowed and spoke quickly in Aelori before Lisan translated. "Your people must remain on the observation deck for now. There is an alignment of events. The court wishes to maintain peace while our alliances are reconsidered." Mara's stomach tightened. The human delegation was to remain, but they were not fully welcome. It was a delicate balance, and Mara could feel the tension in every pulse of energy around them. "Yes, Your Highness," Mara said. "We will comply." Lisan nodded, turning back toward the palace interior. "Do not think that your presence here grants you power," she said, almost a whisper. "You are guests, human. Treat this as both an honor and a risk. One wrong step and you may find yourself drained of more than your pride." Mara swallowed hard. She had read warnings about Aelori lifelink systems, how energy flowed through them and connected the royal family to their people. She knew then that Lisan's words were not idle threats. They were lessons. One wrong move, and the delicate balance could be shattered. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of observation and protocol. Mara watched the court carefully, noting gestures, observing interactions, and committing every nuance to memory. She recorded silently and respectfully every detail that might help humanity understand this alien culture. Every movement had meaning and every word carried power. As night fell over Elysium 5, the city lights shimmered below, and Mara finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. She leaned against the balcony, staring at the stars above and the glowing palace around her. She realized that first contact was not just about greeting the aliens. It was about learning their ways, respecting boundaries, and daring to reach out anyway. Because even if touching the princess could drain her life, reaching out to understand her, truly understand her, was the only way to build trust. And Mara Hale, human linguist, was ready to take that risk. The morning sun of Elysium 5 bathed the palace in soft violet light, making the crystalline spires gleam like giant gemstones. Mara Hale stood at the edge of a floating garden, her eyes tracing the patterns of delicate filaments and floating plants. She had spent the night reviewing her notes, translating fragments of Aelori rituals, and trying to understand the complex systems that held this alien society together. Today she would step deeper into their world. "Human," a melodic voice called, breaking Mara's thoughts. She turned to see Princess Lisan approaching, her violet skin shimmering in the sunlight. Her eyes, sharp and luminous, studied Mara carefully. "You wish to understand our people," Lisan said. "Then you must follow our rules. Do you understand?" Mara bowed slightly. "Yes, Your Highness. I will follow your customs to the letter." Lisan regarded her silently for a moment, then gestured toward the palace. "Come, you will witness a ritual. Observe carefully, but do not interfere. This is how we honor the life link that binds us to our people." Mara followed, feeling both excitement and apprehension. The ritual chamber was circular, walls of pure crystal reflecting the soft violet glow of the Aelori energy fields. At the center, a raised platform pulsed with faint light. Around it, attendants moved in synchronized steps, chanting softly in the Aelori tongue. Each motion, each gesture seemed deliberate and filled with meaning. This ritual, Lisan explained, strengthens the bond between me and the nodes of life that connect to every citizen. It is sacred. Any unauthorized touch or interference can disrupt the flow. That is why you were warned. Do not touch me without consent. Mara nodded. She understood the seriousness now. The princess's earlier warning was not just metaphorical. It was literal. Physical contact could have unintended consequences, even for someone as careful as Mara. As they observed, Mara noticed subtle fluctuations in the energy grids. Some nodes were weaker than others. She leaned slightly closer to the crystal wall, careful not to intrude. "Your Highness," she whispered, "some nodes show signs of instability. Could this be natural degradation?" Lisan's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps, but I fear interference. Someone may have tried to disrupt the nodes. The balance of the lifelink is delicate and we guard it fiercely." Mara felt a chill. Sabotage already? It seemed impossible that anyone could infiltrate such a secure palace. Yet the signs were there. "We will need to study this carefully," she said. The princess stepped closer to the platform, her glowing filaments flicking with energy. "Human, you may learn much here, but knowledge has limits. You must respect those limits. Some truths are not meant for outsiders," Mara nodded. "I understand, Your Highness, but I wish to help if I can. If there is a problem with the lifelink, we may be able to stabilize it with technology, without disturbing your rituals." Lisan's gaze softened faintly, though Mara could tell it was a cautious gesture. "Perhaps, but do not presume that human methods can replace Aelori wisdom. We survive by balance, by understanding the energy that flows through us." Over the next few days, Mara immersed herself in Aelori culture. She studied the ritual archives, observed the lifelink nodes, and learned the precise movements and chants of the palace ceremonies. Each ritual had multiple layers of meaning, from spiritual to practical. Some were meant to strengthen citizen morale, others to ensure the flow of bioelectric energy through the nodes. Mara marveled at the integration of culture and biology, a level of harmony she had never seen among humans. One afternoon, while examining the archives with Jaren Voss, Mara discovered something troubling. "Look at this," she said, pointing at a series of energy patterns from the past week. "See how these nodes fluctuate in ways that don't match the rituals?" "These spikes are unnatural," Jaren frowned. "You think it's sabotage?" "I'm not sure yet," Mara replied. "But someone is tampering with the flow. And if it continues, the lifelink could weaken enough to cause serious issues for the citizens and for the princess herself." Their discussion was interrupted by Lisan, who entered silently. Her filaments glowed softly as she observed the data. "You are correct," she said. "These fluctuations are deliberate. Someone seeks to manipulate the nodes, perhaps to gain power or control. This is why outsiders must follow rules. One misstep can be catastrophic." Mara felt a sense of urgency. "Then we must act quickly to identify the source. If we can find the cause, we can prevent harm and restore stability." Lisan nodded. "Yes, but we must proceed with caution. The conspirator is clever. They understand the lifelink as well as we do." Over the next several days, Mara worked closely with Lisan and the palace technicians. They analyzed energy flows, mapped the lifelink nodes, and traced subtle anomalies in the ritual patterns. Mara's human intuition and scientific methods complemented the Aelori approach. Where the Aelori relied on centuries of ritual and observation, Mara applied logical patterns and predictive modeling. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Mara and Lisan met on the palace balcony. Below them, the floating gardens glimmered in the fading light. "Human," Lisan said, "you are beginning to understand our ways. But there is more than observation. To truly help, you must risk connection." Mara's heart skipped. "Connection?" The princess's eyes glimmered. "Yes, the lifelink allows certain individuals to share energy and awareness. It is dangerous, but it can reveal truths unseen by mere observation." "Are you willing?" Mara hesitated, recalling the princess's earlier warning. Yet she knew that this was the only way to understand the depth of the problem. "I am," she said quietly. "I trust you, Your Highness." Lisan extended her hand and Mara placed hers lightly on the princess's palm. The rush of energy was immediate. Mara felt the flow of the lifelink, the rhythm of the nodes, and faintly the thoughts of the citizens. It was overwhelming but also enlightening. She sensed the subtle patterns of sabotage, the minor disruptions someone had introduced into the system. This is incredible, Mara whispered. I can see the anomalies, but not the source yet. Lyson nodded. The connection allows insight, but not omniscience. You must combine what you feel with what you observe. For hours they worked together, tracing the disruptions, mapping the energy flows, and predicting where the conspirator might strike next. The process was exhausting but rewarding. Mara realized that human intuition, combined with the Elori lifelink, created a synergy neither species could achieve alone. As the night deepened, Mara stepped back, her hand still lightly touching the princess's. Your Highness, if we act on this knowledge, we can stabilize the nodes before any harm comes to your people. Lyson's eyes softened faintly, a rare display of trust. Perhaps humans are not as reckless as I believed, she said. Perhaps you are worthy allies. But remember, one misstep and the balance is broken. One misstep and it is not only your life at risk, it is theirs. Mara nodded solemnly. I understand. I will be careful. Over the following days, Mara and the Elori worked tirelessly. They performed controlled tests on the nodes, monitoring fluctuations and reinforcing the natural energy flows. Mara's devices, carefully synchronized with the rituals, provided a feedback loop that strengthened weak nodes. Slowly, stability returned to the system. Yet Mara could not shake a lingering concern. The conspirator was still unknown. Someone had infiltrated the palace, someone who understood the lifelink well enough to manipulate it. Mara knew that uncovering this person would require more than observation. It would require boldness, ingenuity, and the willingness to bridge the worlds of human logic and Elori ritual. As she stood on the balcony one last time, watching the twin suns rise over Elysium 5, Mara realized that first contact had grown into something far more complex. Humanity was no longer merely visiting. They were becoming part of the Elori world, learning, adapting, and preparing for challenges that would test courage, loyalty, and understanding. And Mara knew that the next step, exposing the conspirator and protecting the lifelink, would demand everything she had learned. The sun rose slowly over Elysium 5, casting long shadows across the crystal towers of the Elori Palace. Inside the grand hall, tension hung thick like a fog. Today was unlike any day Mara Hale had experienced. The Elori had convened a tribunal, a public gathering where accusations were weighed and justice was pronounced, and a human engineer, Jaren Voss, had been accused of a serious crime. Mara walked beside Commander Reel, her heart pounding. The hall was enormous, its ceilings arching higher than any human building she had ever seen. Light filtered through the crystalline walls, bending into prismatic patterns on the floor. The Elori citizens gathered in their ceremonial robes, standing in silence, their eyes fixed on the center of the hall where the tribunal would take place. Lisan, the princess, sat on a raised platform. She looked every bit the ruler she was, tall, regal, and glowing faintly with the lifelink energy that bound her to her people. Even the slightest motion of her hands could ripple through the court, a reminder that she held the balance of this alien society in her control. Jaren Voss, the accused human, stood nervously before the tribunal. He was a skilled engineer, loyal to humanity and careful in his work. But somehow, someone had framed him for tampering with the palace's lifelink systems, a serious offense that could have caused harm to the Elori people. Mara approached him quietly. "Stay calm," she whispered. "We'll get through this. You didn't do anything wrong." Jaren swallowed, nodding. His hands were clenched, his fingers twitching with anxiety. I don't understand. I followed every protocol." "I know," Mara said, "and that's why we'll prove it." The tribunal began with ceremonial words. The lead elder, a stern Elori with silver filaments coiling around her head like serpents of light, spoke in the melodic but precise language of the court. Mara watched carefully, noting each gesture, each pause. The Elori were formal and exacting. Nothing in their behavior was accidental. "You stand accused," the elder said, her voice echoing through the hall, "of unauthorized interference with the lifelink nodes of this palace, an act that threatens both the safety of the princess and the stability of the court. How do you respond?" Jaren opened his mouth, but the words caught in his throat. Mara stepped forward. "Your honors, I can explain," she said firmly. "Jaren Voss has followed all human and Elori safety protocols. He did not tamper with the lifelink nodes. Someone has staged evidence to make it appear as though he did." A murmur spread through the court. The Elori eyes glimmered with interest. Mara continued. The signs of sabotage are clear. Biometrics have been faked. Environmental readings manipulated. The patterns do not match human capabilities. They match an unknown method that someone within the Elori court must have used. The elders exchanged glances. Lisan's eyes fixed on Mara, sharp and calculating. You claim knowledge of our systems that even our technicians do not have, she said. Explain how a human could determine this. Mara held her ground. Because we are not just humans. We are observers. We study patterns. We detect inconsistencies. And we understand that someone is trying to manipulate both our worlds for their own gain. Lisan's face softened slightly, but only for a moment. And why should we trust you, human? You are outsiders. You have no stake in our balance. Mara took a deep breath. Because I have a stake in understanding life, Princess. Because if we fail to see the truth, someone will exploit it, and lives, both human and Elori, will suffer. I am asking for your trust, not for power. The tribunal fell silent. All eyes turned to Jaren. He took a hesitant step forward. I swear I did not touch the nodes. I only followed the instructions given to me. I wanted to help. The elder looked thoughtful but cautious. Words alone are not enough, she said. We require evidence. Mara had prepared for this. She motioned to a nearby console and activated a display, projecting holographic records of node activity and energy flows. The room glimmered with diagrams pulsing with light as Mara pointed out anomalies. See here, she said. The biometrics do not align with any human operator. Look at these patterns. They are too precise in some areas, too erratic in others. This was orchestrated. Someone is framing Jaren. An Elori technician stepped forward, examining the data. These readings, they are unusual, she said slowly. They are unlike anything we have seen. Exactly, Mara said. That is why I am asking you to consider all possibilities. Not just human error, but deliberate manipulation. Lisan leaned forward slightly. Her filaments glowed brighter as the lifelink energy pulsed around her. You have evidence, human, she said. But can you show the method and the source? Mara nodded. Yes, but I need access to the palace archives and the surveillance data. I cannot guarantee the conspirator will not attempt another move, but I can trace the sabotage pattern. The elders murmured among themselves. Finally, the lead elder spoke. Access will be granted. But be warned. Any interference with the lifelink without our consent will be met with the full force of the court. Mara bowed. Understood. For the next hours, Mara and her team examined the archives. They traced energy fluctuations, compared timestamps, and analyzed biometric logs. Piece by piece, they built a picture of deliberate sabotage. The method was clever, unlike anything humans or loyal Elori had seen. Whoever had done this knew both human and Elori systems intimately. Finally, Mara uncovered the critical link. Look here, she said, pointing to a series of coded transmissions. These are the orders. They were routed through an internal network, masked as routine maintenance. But the patterns are consistent with deliberate manipulation. Jaren leaned closer. So, it wasn't me? No, Mara said firmly. It wasn't you. Someone wanted you to take the blame. Someone within the palace itself. When Mara presented the evidence to the tribunal, the reaction was immediate. Gasps of surprise spread through the court. The elders whispered urgently, scanning the archives Mara had highlighted. Lisan's eyes blazed with energy. The conspirator will be found, she said. But we must act carefully. Exposing them too soon could cause chaos, Mara nodded. I agree, but we need to stop them before they try another move. The tribunal recessed for a private session. Mara and Jaren were escorted to a smaller room where they could strategize. We have their trail, Mara said, spreading the data on the holographic table. We can predict their next move, but we need to act quickly. Jaren looked at her with wide eyes. And then what? Do we confront them directly? Mara shook her head. Not yet. First, we expose the plan. Let the public see the truth. Once they know the conspirator has been acting alone, they will lose support. That's when we can move to prevent further sabotage. Hours passed in careful analysis. Mara and Jaren worked side by side, cross-checking every anomaly. The palace's energy patterns, the lifelink nodes, and the communication logs all painted a single picture. Someone wanted to destabilize the lifelink and make it appear as though human interference had caused harm. Finally, the moment came to present the findings. Mara walked back into the grand hall, her heart steady but her mind sharp. The court was packed, and every Alory citizen present turned to watch. Leeson sat above them, glowing with authority and caution. Mara projected the compiled data in front of the court. "These are the facts," she said, voice clear and firm. "Human engineers followed protocol. The sabotage was deliberate, internal, and designed to frame innocent humans. Here is the evidence." The elders leaned in, examining every line of data. The court grew silent. Then one by one, the Alory citizens began to murmur, recognizing the truth in the patterns. Lissan's gaze softened just slightly, and Mara felt a small spark of hope. The lead elder spoke. "The evidence is compelling. It appears the accused human is innocent. The court will now consider steps to identify the true conspirator." Mara exhaled quietly. Jaren looked at her with gratitude. "You saved me," he whispered. Mara shook her head. "We saved the court, the balance, and maybe even the princess. But the work isn't over. The conspirator is still at large, and they will try another move." Lyson stood, her presence filling the hall. "Then we act," she said. "Together, human and Alory, let this be a warning. Deception will not succeed against truth. Courage and unity." The crowd murmured in agreement, and for the first time, Mara felt the full weight of human ingenuity recognized by an alien civilization. The humans were no longer mere observers. They were participants, allies, and problem solvers. As Mara looked around the hall, she realized that first contact had led to something far greater. It had led to trust, cooperation, and a chance to prove that humanity could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Alory, even in the face of danger. And as the tribunal prepared to reconvene to plan the next step, Mara knew one thing for certain: the true challenge was just beginning. The palace was quiet in the early morning light, but Mara Hale could feel the tension pulsing through its walls. The lifelink systems that connected the Alory royal family to their people were failing. Everywhere she looked, subtle signs of distress rippled through the palace staff and citizens. Faint tremors in their energy fields, sluggish movements, and distracted gazes. The Alory were beginning to feel the effects of a weakening connection to their leader. Princess Lisanna Mara adjusted her gloves and walked into the observation chamber, where panels of glowing energy grids displayed the lifelink nodes. Commander Riel and Jaren Voss were already there, reviewing data from the previous night. "This isn't just sabotage anymore," Mara said, her voice tense. "The lifelink is degrading naturally in some sectors. The nodes are unstable." Riel frowned. "You mean the system is failing, not just being tampered with?" "Yes," Mara replied. "And if we don't stabilize it, the Alory could experience widespread lethargy, confusion, even panic. It could collapse the entire social structure. The conspirator might be trying to exploit this natural vulnerability." At that moment, Lysan entered the room. Her violet skin shimmered faintly, but the glow of her lifelink was weaker than usual. Mara noted it immediately. The link between the princess and her people was being strained. "Human," Lysan said, her voice calm but edged with worry. "What is the status?" Mara stepped forward. "Your Highness, the lifelink is failing in several regions. It is not fully sabotaged, but the nodes are unstable. If we act quickly, we can stabilize them before widespread harm occurs. But it will require combining human technology with Alory rituals, something that has never been attempted before." Lysan's eyes widened slightly. "You propose to interfere with the lifelink?" "Not interfere, Your Highness," Mara replied. "We will enhance it. We will use your ritual methods, but guide them with human engineering to stabilize the nodes. We need your consent and cooperation." Lysan studied her carefully, then nodded. "We have no choice. Proceed. But know this, human, one error could harm my people." "One error, and it is not just my life you risk, it is theirs." Mara nodded solemnly. "I understand." The next hours were a blur of preparation. The hybrid solution required Mara and her team to map the failing nodes, design stabilizers that could interface with Alory biofields, and coordinate with the palace's ritual specialists. Each step required precise timing. Human technology was fast, efficient, and data-driven. Alory rituals were slow, symbolic, and deeply tied to energy flows. Mara had to bridge the two worlds, finding a rhythm that satisfied both. Finally, they were ready. Mara, Jaren, and a team of human engineers joined the ritual chamber where Lysan stood at the center. The chamber glowed with soft violet light, the walls pulsating gently with the heartbeat of the lifelink. Lysan extended her hands, palms outward, and Mara approached carefully. Human, Lyson said, her voice calm but commanding. You must link with me. Only then can your devices synchronize with the nodes. Mara hesitated for a fraction of a second, remembering the princess's warning from their first meeting. Touch me again and I will bleed you dry, human. But this time Lyson's consent was clear. Mara placed her hands lightly against Lyson's palms. The pulse of energy was immediate. Mara felt a rush of warmth, a connection she could not have imagined. Her own heartbeat seemed to sync with the princess's, and through the energy, she sensed the Elori people, their fears, their confusion, and their hope. The humans activated the stabilizers, their devices glowing and humming. The ritual specialists guided the energy flows, chanting softly, creating a resonance that the machines could amplify. Slowly, the nodes began to stabilize. Colors returned to the energy grids. The tremors faded. Mara felt a subtle shift in the pulse beneath her hands. The lifelink was holding. But then, an alarm sounded. One of the outer nodes in the far northern sector had collapsed. Mara's heart raced. The conspirator, she whispered. They're not done yet. Lyson's eyes blazed. We must act quickly. Take me to the northern sector. We cannot let them divide the people further. Mara, Rill, and Lyson moved swiftly, using floating transport platforms to reach the failing node. As they descended, Mara noted the signs of instability. Citizens moving in slow, uncoordinated patterns, energy surges flickering unpredictably. The conspirator had tampered with the node remotely, but Mara's devices allowed her to track the energy flow in real time. Together, Mara and Lyson synchronized the stabilizers. It was delicate work. The conspirator had introduced a countermeasure that risked severing the node entirely. Mara adjusted the frequency of the stabilizer. Lyson guided the ritual and the energy began to stabilize once more. Finally, after tense minutes, the node held. Mara stepped back, breathing heavily. Lyson's filaments glowed brighter, her energy vibrant and strong again. It is done, she said. For now, Mara nodded. Yes, for now. But the conspirator will try again. We need to find them before they can strike a final blow. Lyson's eyes met Mara's. Human, you have risked much to protect my people. You have shown courage and wisdom. Perhaps humans are not so naive after all. Mara smiled, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. We're learning from you, princess. And we will continue to help, as long as you allow us. As they returned to the palace, Mara realized that the crisis had changed everything. Humans were no longer mere observers. They had become essential partners in protecting a species whose survival now depended on understanding, trust, and cooperation. And Mara knew that the final confrontation with the conspirator was coming. It would not be easy, but humanity and the Elori had proven they could stand together, even in the face of danger. The palace of Elysium 5 glimmered under the twin suns, but shadows lingered in its corridors. The conspirator who had attempted to destabilize the Elori lifelink and frame human engineers remained at large. Mara Hale knew that finding them would require more than technology. It would require understanding motives, predicting behavior, and bridging the gap between two very different species. Princess Lyson called an emergency council in the central chamber. The court, the elders and representatives of the human delegation gathered. The air was thick with tension. Every eye in the room was on Mara and the princess. We cannot allow the conspirator to strike again, Lyson said, her voice firm. If they succeed, our people will fall into confusion and fear. Humanity, you have shown skill and judgment. I trust your counsel. Mara bowed slightly. Your Highness, we can anticipate the conspirators' moves if we combine our knowledge. They are trying to isolate key nodes to force dependence on themselves. If we expose their plan to the public, we can remove their power. Lyson nodded. Then proceed. But know this, failure is not an option. The plan was daring. Mara proposed broadcasting a controlled link, sharing the conspirators' manipulations through a consensual connection to the lifelink network. This way the Elori citizens could see the truth directly, without harm, and the conspirators' power would be nullified. Preparations took hours. Mara and Lyson worked closely, synchronizing energy flows, calibrating human devices, and ensuring that consent protocols were strictly followed. The tension was high, but Mara felt a growing sense of determination. Humanity had a chance to prove that they could act with both intelligence and empathy. Finally, the moment came. Lysan stood at the center of the chamber, her hands extended toward Mara. "Are you ready?" she asked. Mara nodded. "Yes, Princess. Let's do this together." As their hands met, the connection surged through the chamber. Mara could feel Lysan's energy, the lifelink flowing like a river, and through it she glimpsed the conspirators' manipulations, the hidden commands, the altered nodes, the false data. It was all there, visible to any who were connected. The Elori citizens gasped. They saw the truth. The conspirators' attempts to isolate nodes and create fear were exposed. The elders conferred quickly, recognizing the manipulations and withdrawing support from the traitor. The conspirators' plan was unraveling. Lysan's filaments glowed brighter than ever as the lifelink stabilized across the palace and beyond. "It is done," she said. "Our people are safe and the truth is clear." Mara stepped back, breathing heavily. The conspirator is exposed. They can no longer threaten the court. The conspirator appeared briefly, a shadowed figure trying to escape, but the loyal Elori intercepted them. They were captured without violence, their plan foiled by transparency, cooperation, and the trust between human and Elori. In the aftermath, Lysan addressed the court and the human delegation. "We have learned that outsiders, humans, can bring wisdom and courage. They have stood with us when danger threatened. Let this be a lesson. Trust, cooperation, and courage can overcome deception." Mara felt a surge of pride. Humanity had not only survived the test, they had contributed meaningfully to saving a species. The Elori and humans had proven that working together, respecting differences and valuing consent could create something stronger than either species alone. Weeks later, a formal cultural pact was signed. Humans would share technology, research, and diplomatic training. The Elori would share rituals, ethical frameworks, and stewardship of lifelink systems. Schools were established for young humans and Elori to learn together, building understanding for generations to come. Mara stood with Lysan on a balcony overlooking the city. The energy flows of the lifelink shimmered gently across the towers, stabilizing and vibrant. Lysan extended her hand, her filaments glowing softly. "This time," she said, smiling faintly, "with mutual consent." Mara placed her hand in Lysan's. The energy was warm, steady, and entirely safe. It was a symbol, a bridge between worlds, a bond formed through courage, empathy, and trust. As they looked out over the city, Mara realized that first contact had led to something far greater than diplomacy. It had led to friendship, cooperation, and the promise of a future where humans and Elori could stand together, learning from each other and facing challenges as allies. The twin suns set over Elysium 5, casting long golden beams across the crystalline towers. Mara felt hope and determination. Humanity had proven that even in the face of danger, ingenuity, empathy, and courage could shine. And somewhere deep within her chest, she felt the quiet satisfaction of a mission accomplished, not just for herself, but for two species who had chosen to trust one another. The future was uncertain, but it was bright.